Let's face it, many people don't remember this story. 40 years is a very long time, but there are still some of the people involved around to talk about it after all of these years. And in doing so in this story, we were able to bring back an old Local 4 friend to help us tell the story. We want to take a moment to tell you that some of this video may be difficult to watch. June 11th, 1982, Detroit firefighters had to improvise a rescue in a most bizarre fashion. The Buhl Building's 8th floor burning when they arrived. Frantic staffers from a well-known law firm hung out of windows as the smoke billowed around them, pleading for rescue. In some areas, the smoke so thick they climbed out onto skyscraper window ledges seeking safety, their legs dangling in the breeze. No one ran to the stairwell because of this man, Detroiter Robert Harrington, who'd shot up the offices. He killed a 25-year-old law school intern, pumping 5 shots into her chest. By all accounts, Eve August was a bright light whose life was cut short entirely too soon. Harrington hid a jar of gasoline in his coat, along with the shotgun, a Molotov cocktail that he lit and slammed into the law office wall, which kindled the massive blaze. It's difficult to watch, realizing back in 1982 the Detroit Fire Department didn't have the aerial ladders that we have today. They could only reach the 6th floor. In order to get to the terrorized people screaming for help, they had to splice a 20-foot-long ladder to the fully extended ladder truck. Those who stood gasping for air for minutes that seemed like hours gingerly climbed down the makeshift steps to safety. Local 4's Roger Weber was there when the lead lawyer, the late former Judge Ed Bell, climbed off the ladder truck bleeding.
The guy came in, asked for $2,500 in an insurance check that had not come in the mail today. Told him he wasn't there. He'd have to come back. And he said, "I'm not coming back." Reached inside his pocket, pulled out a gun or shotgun or something and started to shoot. He nicked me on the side.
Harrington shot 5 other people and forced 3 dozen into the hospital. 2 lawyers jumped to escape the smoke and flames, fell some 40 feet and spent the rest of their lives in wheelchairs. The Detroit News provided perhaps the most memorable picture of this story. Here you see Detroit Police Detective Sergeant Tommy Robinson in the hat there, wide-eyed and leaning out of the window of the Buhl Building as the smoke engulfed him. He's with 2 other men. The one on the left is Robert Harrington, the gunman. He's bleeding there. The one on the right is Gerald Harrington, Robert's brother. Gerald was a downtown bank vice president who got a phone call from Robert's wife telling him to try and head off Robert before he hurt someone. Gerald arrived too late. Detective Robinson arrested both at the time, not knowing why Gerald was there. Robinson received the Medal of Honor from the Michigan Police Chiefs Association for his bravery making that arrest that day, which just happened to be his day off, and he still responded to the call for help.
Is that Roger Weber?
Now, when we reached out to Detective Robinson, he asked us if now retired Local 4 reporter Roger Weber was around. He'd been saving a message for him for a lot of years, so we arranged for a surprise in front of the Buhl Building.
You were the only one clever enough to wait outside the hospital to interview me. Remember that?
I've never been called clever before, but I'll take it.
He was very clever. I said, "Nah, I got to talk to him because he was patient enough." Because we were there about 6 hours, I think it was. I think 6 or 7 hours, and he was the only person standing outside the door, and I saw him. And he says, "Excuse me, your name? What's your name?" I said, "Thomas Robinson." He said, "Were you in that park?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" I said, "Yeah." And now I give you my interview, right?
You sure did.
Yeah, I see. I had to give him some respect.
We found that Roger did a number of interviews with Detective Robinson covering the long legal case that ensued, and Roger remembered it all, too.
I rounded the corner, and there's smoke pouring out the windows. There are people at those windows. It was shocking to see that. And I remember the ladder truck couldn't reach the floor they needed to get to, so they took another ladder, somehow secured that to the main ladder, and that got them a couple floors higher.
Another big part of the story was the life cut short.
I have never forgotten the name Eve August. You could show me her picture, I would know immediately that that was her. And I just always wonder, she was so bright, what would her future have been? She would have gone on to great things, and I still feel sorry for her feel sorry for her family, too.
Right, yeah.
Detective Robinson, who was now 84 years young, came away from the story feeling the same way. He told us he could have died in several ways that day, so he made it a point to strike up a relationship with Eve August's brother, Lou. They've met every year on the June 11th anniversary, and it's no small thing.
He wanted to go see Robert Harrington and tell him that he had forgiven him for what he did to his sister. He said, "Would you be willing to go with me?" I said, "Sure, I'll go with you."
On Saturday, a group of those involved, Eve August's two brothers and their wives, Judge Tim Kenney, who was the prosecutor in the case, and retired officer Tommy Robinson, whom you just met there, gathered at the Buhl on Saturday morning, which was the 40th anniversary. They prayed for Eve August and the others who were hurt that day. They traded stories about their lives after the shooting. And more than anything, they wanted to keep Eve August's memory alive. And obviously, they've succeeded. In addition to the Michigan State University Law Scholarship that they have created in her name.
Oh,
Wow,
that's fantastic.
That was an incredible look back. To see that Roger was
I
there.
was born in Detroit, raised in Lansing, but I didn't know about this.
Yeah, I had no idea either. And when you dig into the archives, and we have online, we've got like a 25-minute compilation of everything we had from that day. It's astonishing.
Well, people who were around during that time will never forget it. I did want to ask you about Robert Harrington, the shooter.
He is in a prison in the UP, Eastern UP. It's called Kinchlow is the facility. And he is there. He has a life sentence. But the interesting part is that when he ended up in Jackson after his first conviction, he attacked a guard with a shank in his cell. And so he ended up being sentenced to another 20 years. So he will never get out of jail. And another thing about him is that the appeals court decided in his original trial that one word, the judge used the word "and" instead of "or" in the jury instructions, and ended up being retried like 15 years after the original case. So it's just a fascinating story.
Yeah. Well, and then the connection that we just learned this morning, you have a family connection to all this.
Yeah, we were talking about it because you guys were like, I didn't know this happened. I was like, the only reason why I know it happened is because my mom was actually in the building. She was 22 years old at the time.
Wow.
She was a legal secretary. So that really was just, I mean, just seeing that woman who lost her life, like that really hits
about
home.
your mom's age.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I do remember that because my mom and dad were dating at the time, and my dad said that when that happened and he couldn't get a hold of her and it was really scary, he knew she was there, that's when he knew that he wanted to marry her.
Wow.
And they just celebrated their 39th wedding anniversary. So really got to it.
Silver lining there.
Exactly.
Did that meeting ever happen though between Eve August's family going to the
No,
prison?
because the prison warden said that he was mentally unstable, and they didn't want the meeting to happen. But that he forgave him is astonishing.
That is astonishing.
But it's incredible the
Absolutely.
way that they're keeping Eve August's name alive.
Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you
story,
very
Rod.
much.
Thank you.